What accessory do you think is missing with the Switch? Man, you guys are giving me good questions I actually have to think about for a moment. I'm not prepared for this. You know what we need to do? We need to bring back the ridiculous, over-the-top Game Boy accessories. I need new stereo speakers to add on to the side of my Switch and a magnifying screen. I'm just kidding, that'd be awful. I actually don't really know. I feel like most of what's been out so far really does cover the main problems a lot of people have, and we have grips, we have ways of adding Bluetooth audio support. There's always bigger and better options of those things that I look forward to, but as far as like one type of accessory, there's not one that really comes to mind right now. Now that it seems things have calmed down a bit more about the relationship between Microsoft and Nintendo, are we actually going to see Microsoft services in a Nintendo console for the next generation? I don't know if it's even going to necessarily be next generation, if it happens at all. There was a really heavy rumor going around for a while that we were going to see a lot more Xbox stuff make its way to the Switch, both including things like first-party titles, which has happened a little bit. Both Cuphead and Ori have made their way to the Switch. But the bigger question there is, are we going to see services make their way there, like, for instance, Project Xcloud? And I don't think that's completely impossible. Currently, the relationship has been pretty positive. Yes, we haven't seen much more happen outside of the fact that we've gotten more games ported over, but I think Microsoft in particular is very much about trying to be the team player with other consoles right now. I mean, they've been one of the heaviest proponents of doing things like cross-platform multiplayer, and I think that when it comes to the idea of more Microsoft-based services making their way to a Nintendo system, whether that's the Switch currently or some kind of next-generation system Nintendo's working on, I think that play is much more in Nintendo's hands. I think it's something that Microsoft would be willing to do, especially if there was enough vocal support for it. It's just a matter of whether or not Nintendo would be open to it, which I'm a little more skeptical of. I will say, I think the idea is amazing. I mean, I've gotten a chance to play a little bit of the early demo of Xcloud, and while I think it's great being able to play those things on my phone, having a larger device screen and something that's built for handheld portable play would be amazing. So having something like the Switch would be a great natural fit for that. I mean, if I could play the newest Gears of War, the newest Halo, Forza, whatever, on the go with a Switch with those kind of graphics, that's amazing. And I think it'd be something that'd be beneficial to both companies. It's just, I don't know if Nintendo is that interested in it right now. Will people buy next-gen systems if their prices are $650 plus? People in general? Yeah, sure. There's going to be someone out there willing to pay that much. Is it going to be the same size audience? Probably not. You know, especially since we've already had more expensive consoles released recently for 4K support and that kind of thing. I don't think general audiences would be super open to a $650 console. I don't think that the next-gen systems are going to necessarily hit that high. I think $600 is a possibility, and in that situation, I think it's going to be really interesting to see how much of the audience actually converts over to those next-gen systems right away. Because yeah, when those systems come out, there's going to be that part of the audience that's willing to spend that much and will convert over, and there's going to be continued support for PS4 and Xbox One during that time for quite a while. We're going to see games come out on both systems, pretty normal when you have new systems come out, and then as time goes on, hopefully those systems take a little bit of a price drop, maybe at least some bundles come out, and more people move on over time. So with $650, I think not a lot of people. $600, probably at least a decent conversion rate. I think $500 is really the sweet spot of being something that's still pretty expensive at launch, but is more acceptable by a lot of the audience, especially because that is where the One X launched and showed that there is some willingness to spend on that. Do you think Call of Duty Modern Warfare will come to Switch? I think it's a possibility. I mean, Activision Blizzard have worked a little bit with the Switch. We've seen some Blizzard titles make their way over, specifically like Overwatch and Diablo 3. So I don't think it's out of the question for Activision to eventually bring stuff that way. I just don't think it's a very high priority. I think there's a belief that that style of game isn't necessarily targeted at the Switch audience as much, especially because the Switch is a lower power system. But if time goes by and enough interest is brought up, as well as, you know, maybe some evidence of how it could be ported at least somewhat well, I think it's a possibility. I will say I don't think it's particularly likely, but it could happen. 2 questions. What? All right, I gotta read these. What's your personal concept for a Switch Pro? Or if you don't have one, what's your favorite Switch Pro concept right now? And should I wait for the Switch Pro? Okay, so favorite Switch Pro concept. If we're going with the idea of the Switch Pro being a handheld still, we actually did this whole coverage before of an idea that someone had called the Switch Up, which I thought was an amazing looking system. As far as how actually feasible it is, probably not super high chances, but that is what I envision when I think of like a next level Switch system. Something that really has a premium feel and look to it. As far as waiting for a Switch Pro, I don't know what to tell you, man. It's a weird situation right now because first off, we don't even know if it's a fact that Nintendo's working on a Switch Pro. It's a very popular rumor. There are a lot of kind of circumstantial evidence that points that something is in the works, but even if they are working on a Switch Pro, we don't even know what form it's going to take yet. It could be a standalone system that doesn't actually have portable usage, kind of like how the Switch Lite was handheld only. A Switch Pro could be docked only. It could be a bigger, better version of the regular Switch. There are just so many unknown factors right now that to say, should you wait for a Switch Pro right now is just, there's nothing to go off of. Which franchise's future are you the most excited about? Ooh, that's an interesting question. Franchise. Okay, I probably have a lot of different answers I could give this question. This is the first one that popped in my head right now, at least. I'm actually really excited to see what more happens with the Xenoblade franchise. This is something that had like a bit of life on the Wii for Nintendo and then got a lot more popular with the Switch when Xenoblade 2 came out. They're remaking Xenoblade 1, and so there's a lot more interest in that series than there's ever been in a long time. I mean, it's kind of the spiritual successor to this older RPG series, Xenogears, and then there was Xenosaga, which was a little weird. The point is that finally this general overarching franchise is getting some love and attention, and I'm hoping that means a lot more games coming out from them. Best games on the Switch, Xbox, PS4 this year so far. Oh man, that's a pretty good list actually. I feel like we haven't had any like huge hits this year, but there's been a lot of really solid releases. For me personally, the new Fire Emblem on Switch was great. The DLC I wish was a little better, but the base game is still fantastic. Astral Chain on the Switch, awesome action game. For PS4 and Xbox, I absolutely love Devil May Cry 5. That was a big return to the kind of older style of the series for me. I didn't hate 4, but I wasn't big on it. I hated the rebrand with DMC, but DMC 5 was awesome, so that's a big one for me. It's in process right now, but Death Stranding I'm currently loving. I'm not done with it yet. I haven't decided if I actually hate it. I know it's been very polarizing for a lot of people, but personally, my experience so far, I really like it. And then one other game I gotta talk about is Outer Worlds. I absolutely loved Fallout New Vegas, which was done by Obsidian before, even though Bethesda was the like overarching label attached to Fallout at the time. And New Vegas was my favorite one. Outer Worlds, while not being exactly the same as New Vegas, it has a lot of similar inspiration while letting Obsidian do what they want, and it's probably one of the most polished releases Obsidian has done. They kind of have a history of having some games come out maybe just a little too soon and having some buggy issues, and while Outer Worlds certainly isn't without its bugs, it's working a lot better, and I love it a lot. Do you think that N64 games will come to Nintendo Switch Online anytime soon? Anytime soon, definitely not. At all? I think it's a possibility. I mean, the current rate that we're seeing right now is that when Switch Online first launched, we had NES games right away, and then a year later, we got Super Nintendo games. So following that logic, it would be a possibility that a year later, September or maybe even August of next year, we could be seeing N64 games added. The only thing is, Nintendo has a really bad habit of heavily celebrating those first two consoles and then never really moving past that, as far as games that have been made available digitally and even ways that they've done them later, like with, say, the Classic Edition systems. But I think it's actually pretty likely. I don't know if they're necessarily going to do it in that same time frame. It might be something they drag out a little further, but hopefully N64 next year is a possibility. With that in mind, I guess I would say no, don't. If you have any interest in grabbing a Switch at all, and if you're like, oh wait, what if the next big awesome thing comes out? We just don't know what it is or even when it is. So at this point, grab one if you really want to grab a Switch. If there's no games you want to play at all and you just like the idea of owning a Nintendo system, then yeah, I guess wait a little longer for more info. Do you think the advance in video game graphics with the upcoming PlayStation and Xbox consoles will turn developers away from making Switch games since there's such a large gap in technology between the Switch and the competition? So this is a big problem that happened back when Nintendo released the Wii and they were going against the 360 and the PS3. To be fair, at that time, Nintendo's third-party relationships were already not doing super great, but the Wii did not help at all. And we ended up having some specialized games from third-party developers but then a lot of other third-party games just got dropped entirely. And in the some situations where third-party developers did make games for the Wii and the Xbox, it didn't go well at all, because the Wii version just ended up being this shadow of what the other versions were and just did not run great at all. That being said, I think the Switch has built up such a strong audience at this point and such a dedicated style that I think a lot more companies are interested in making games designed for the Switch in mind. I think that when we do get next-gen systems, we are going to see a drop in games that are multi-platform for them. I don't think you're going to necessarily see the next big Call of Duty or the next big Assassin's Creed or whatever big name third-party titles out there. I think it's going to be that situation again where they're focused on Xbox, PlayStation, PC, and Nintendo is left aside. But at the same time, I think a lot of those companies are still going to be interested in making dedicated titles for the Switch, and I think there's a lot more interest now than there was previously because of the Switch's success and that emphasis on the concept of being able to play on the go and docked. Are you more excited for the PlayStation 5 or Project Scarlett? I honestly don't know. I mean, there's so much unknowns for both systems right now. The main thing we can walk away knowing is, yes, they are both 4K, maybe 60 frame support systems at the same time, and they're gonna have more new big games on them. There's just so many unknowns right now. You know, there's a couple titles that we think are probably gonna be released on PS5 or Scarlett instead of the current gen consoles. The only one we really know for sure is that Scarlett is going to have Halo Infinite. There's just too much that's an unknown right now. I will say that just going in blind, I probably do lean slightly more towards PlayStation, only because there are a lot of studios that tend to make exclusive games to them that I like a lot more. But at the same time, Microsoft has been trying really hard the last year to kind of up their game a lot, especially after how well the Xbox One launch did. And so I'm really curious to see what they're going to do to prepare a big launch for Scarlett. So I haven't picked a side yet for this next gen. There's just not enough we know.